Hi, this is Jacqueline Eckern with Eating Disorder Hope, and I am interviewing the brilliant Andrew Walen today. And with that, I'd like to introduce you and have you tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So thank you for taking the time to speak with me. So yes, I'm Andrew Walen. I'm the founder and executive director of the Body Image Therapy Center. And I got into the world of eating disorders as a patient first and worked through a 20-year experience dealing with body image, eating disorders, and associated issues. And decided once I found recovery, and I was actually in graduate school at the time, that I was going to invest the rest of my clinical years working to help others recover as well. In particular, I wanted to create a safe space for men to seek care because as a male and as a large male, there was no opportunity for me to seek what or to receive what I was looking for, which was a place that understood the male experience, that my eating disorder was not solely about weight and thinness, that it was about size and strength and masculinity and so many other issues. And that being big also comes with its own preconceived expectations of, well, okay, so you're not sort of starving yourself and you're not binging and you're not compulsively exercising, but go ahead, let's get around now to finally losing weight, which of course is antithetical to real recovery and eating disorders. And so there was so much, this was before health at every size became the popular term. This was before the diagnosis of binge eating disorder, before anybody was really putting out media and materials and research about males and eating disorders. So my recovery was self-directed in so many ways, except for the help of really one clinician who really helped me with everything she had and every tool that she could. And she was a dietitian, not a therapist, because I couldn't find a therapist who was able to really meet my needs, both clinically as well as financially. You know, eating disorders are so rarely actually affordable in terms of treatment. So, so this is something that, okay, big hole, let's fill the hole. And that's where it all came from. So that's my life's work. That's my mission.
Yeah. Well, it's clearly evident that you've been successful. I know you contribute to the National Eating Disorder Association and leadership roles. You are a writer. You founded the Body Image Center. I mean, so and your own practice. But I'd like to dive into some questions because a lot of the folks watching are really interested in understanding male eating disorders better. And
sure.
I'd like to talk about why there's a growing concern about males with eating disorders. Can you tell us about that?
Well, so the thing is, males have always been diagnosed with an eating disorder since the beginning of eating disorder diagnosis. You know, we talk about the very onset of this disease in terms of description goes back to the Middle Ages, to monks who took vows of asceticism to refrain from eating for a certain period of time to get closer to God.
Yeah.
And when they had to return to normal eating, they could not. They were afraid not of thinness, but of losing the sense of holy connection.
Yes.
So it is not about weight. That's the misconception about eating disorders. It is about returning to normal, healthy eating, and that there is something blocking you from doing this. Now, in a world where we have endless supplies of food in American culture, for instance, certainly there's food shortages everywhere, even in America, but where abundance exists, where do we often see people start down this path? It's typically from some kind of comparison, me to you, and how I don't measure up. Now, if that's the case, it could be weight, shape, skin color, hair, prowess, physicality, sexuality, intelligence, money. I mean, so many ways in which we do this. Now, if I could just control one of those things, I would feel more empowered, and I go towards that need for control. Now, for guys, what is the first thing you typically think about? It's not weight. What are they thinking about? Masculinity. How do I measure up to the guy next to me? That's about my strength, my muscle definition, how that for hundreds of years, the larger male was considered slothful and less intelligent, which led to this aesthetic need, not for thinness, for, again, not aesthetic, but if I were thin, then I was no longer thought to be stupid and less than. So the fixation, again, is so many different pieces. Now let's fast forward from a couple hundred years ago to about that it's about intelligence and power and dominance to it is about strength and control. We have people in Silicon Valley who are doing all kinds of food manipulation techniques, intermittent fasting or other things. Part of what they call, what is the term? I think they call it genetic manipulation or something. But essentially, if I can retrain my brain to be even sharper and more clinical, and sharper and faster and better than the other person in Silicon Valley. So again, it's about dominance. It wasn't about the aesthetic. There's so many reasons that males are in this competition phase and the need to one up and be better. So now let's talk about the body image piece, which does also very much come into play. Most people who come into my program are concerned about body image to some degree. I mean, that's fairly clear. Bigger guys typically want to be smaller. Smaller guys typically want to be bigger. And it's about a 50-50 split. So unlike in women, where the majority of women want to simply be thinner. Masculinity, muscularity, the need to be dominant, that is where most of this comes from. So for instance, guys may talk about the scale, but what they are more concerned about, what causes them more emotional discontent, is the size and the shape and the definition of their muscles. And that is the body image component. And with a society that has become more and more obsessed with the masculine shape of it's no longer the 6-pack abs, it's the 8-pack abs. It's the striations that come with severe dehydration. It is the shaving of every body part so that you can see every ripple of every muscle. It's the use of performance-enhancing drugs. It's the use of appearance-enhancing drugs. Again, sometimes people are using these not because they want to perform better like they do for sports. They used to just call it PEDs, right? Performance-enhancing drugs. Now it's APEDs, appearance and performance-enhancing drugs. And that's because they want something like 1 in 20 high school kids has already tried steroids. And I asked the people who are doing this research, and I said, how does somebody in high school, I wouldn't know in high school where to get steroids. And he said, easy. You find the biggest guy in the gym and you go ask him. It's that simple. And he says, come back to the locker room. And he's the dealer, just like the dealer on the corner for crack or cocaine or heroin. This is the experience of what toxic masculinity has also helped fuel. Toxic masculinity, the power and need for dominance, has so much been a part of this development. So again, what does this have to do with eating disorders? Eating disorders, typically we think of restriction, bulimic behavior, binge behavior, exercise behaviors. To get that sense of I appear and feel and look the part certainly requires a lot of time and effort in gyms, which is what we see an awful lot of males experience. But it's the added component of the disordered eating behaviors, the cutting out of food types, the rigidity of what you will allow in your body, the shame and the guilt if you ever break those rules, the shame and the guilt if you ever don't exercise and purge out the extra calories that you may have consumed. This is the essence of what eating disorders in males look like. And because we see it as so normalized in our toxic masculine culture, we have seen for a long period of time while these behaviors were ramping up, nobody said anything about, oh, there's an eating disorder problem, until it reached some kind of critical mass and the media started taking notice. And people like myself started speaking out, and researchers started saying things. And we started to change the narrative that eating disorders were a female-only disease, or that the words that I've seen by several nonprofits are a preponderance of women suffer from this, not men. That language has, over the last 10 plus years, started to change. But what's interesting is the hospitalization rates were already starting. In the 2010s and before, we started to see that increase in hospitalizations. Some reports of up to 400% increase in the 2000s and 2010s of males suffering eating disorders and requiring hospitalization. Men typically don't seek care until they are critically ill. And I know that, I mean, like even just recently having my own cheek infection, I was like, only when my ear was hurting wasn't like, it'll be fine. And then when my face blew up, I was like, oh, I better get help. Well, this is the same thing, you know, in the role of mental health in males, because that would require us to face, I have a female disease, which is not true. That I have a gay man's disease, which is an emasculating thing to think. And I am somehow less than. I can't give this up if I face this. So that's really where the work is. This is not a male or female issue. The research shows that 25 to 33% of anorexia and bulimia cases are male. That about equal number of binge eating disorder cases are male. That a significant majority of cases of ARFID are male. That when you take into account muscle dysmorphia, which is the compulsive exercise and fixation on muscularity with disordered eating behaviors, which while not technically an eating disorder, is an eating disorder in my mind, is predominantly male. So that means we are talking about millions of males in the United States currently, right now, struggling with eating disorder behaviors, with practically no expertise in how to identify, convince to get treatment, have equal and equitable care options as females, and have even insurance companies willing to pay for it, because guess what? Males will be suffering these eating disorders at higher weights than females, and so they don't think about severity. Mm-hmm. But the very anatomy of males is larger than females. Muscularity, bone structure. So of course, they're going to have a higher BMI despite being perhaps more severe in their behaviors. Basic starting anatomy, but they don't think about that. So there's so much bloody work we have to do. Yeah. There's so much work. And so the thing that I decided to do was, first and foremost, I've got to normalize it. I got to educate about it. And then I got to create a place where people can go, where guys are going to go to get care. And that is the essence of why I started the Body Image Therapy Center and why we are opening up this residential treatment center to have a dedicated men's unit. Because while men do seek care, what they typically do is they have one-off slots in some other program that says we are gender inclusive, which means we'll give a bed to a male when a male comes seek it. But we have done nothing to normalize the experience for a male. We haven't prepared the clients who are going to be in the room with the male. We haven't taught the clinicians how to change the language of the groups and the curriculum to address the concerns that males have. We haven't created a sense where males can come together and get that sense of camaraderie and teamwork and normalcy. None of that's done. And now I have heard there are some programs where, hey, we got 4 or 5 guys in the program, and we found a way to get a house, a 6-bed house, perhaps out in California, in LA, where we were able to get for like a short period of time agreement from our higher up executive team to allow us to not put women in that group, so we just have a men's unit. And then of course that dissipates. There's no energy behind it. There's no expertise behind it, and it fizzles. And I don't want to see that happen. So for me, the goal is create a place that is fully dedicated, a unit, 6-bed unit inside a larger program, because I do think that there are female perspectives that guys need to hear. They've got to understand they're part of a larger world, and we don't want to just isolate and say, look at our male experience. Now, this is an eating disorder experience, but you have to have a safe place to talk. You have to have a safe place to say what you need to say and not worry about offending somebody else because you don't know any better. So you need to have both, right? So to have a dedicated space for men to be treated by men and have that true understanding and empathic, safe space. So that's the goal. That's the residential program that I've created here in Maryland. We're opening up in a week or 2, depending on, of course, permitting and licensing and all the, fiascos that come with that. But that is the game. This is the legacy that I'm trying to create so that we can then also do other cool things like creating a body image program that is dedicated to males and judge its efficacy, to create assessment tools that are completely dedicated to measuring males' muscle dysmorphia and eating disorder pathology as totally separate and unique pieces that we need to follow and research. And then give that data to the people who are researchers to learn from it, to find out what do we need to do to normalize when men come into a milieu where there is mixed and all genders. How do we work that into the program? This is stuff that needs to be done and nobody's done it yet. And my hope is that this is groundbreaking, that what we do here can be taken to the West Coast, and what we do here can be taken to Australia, and what we do here can be taken to the United Kingdom. And because eating disorders are not an American phenomenon, they are a worldwide phenomenon, and they're not all based on the same sense of what we idealize as masculinity, but what masculinity means to other people around the world. Different cultures have different sense of what it means to be a man, but the key element that is universal is, how do I stack up?
Yeah, that comparison component.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now let's take into the account race. Let's take into the account the person who is gender fluid. Let's take into the account somebody who comes from a deeply religious background. Let's take into account somebody with trauma, somebody who is bisexual or gay. There's so much more. We are not static silos of people. We are this band that we all have to take into account. And I would love to be able to serve every need for everyone. And I recognize that's ultimately where it needs to get to. But what I'm starting with is the thing that I personally resonate with, and I'm trying to have simply, we got to start somewhere. The male experience, whatever that looks like, whoever deems themselves as male, this is your experience. And we have to have a safe space for you to talk about your lived experience and what recovery is going to require of you, which is your definition of masculinity, health, relationships, your devotion to your work, your personal development, your sense of joy and adventure, your family. You have to take all of that in, your spiritual connection to something greater than yourself, your emotional vocabulary. You know, all of these things are part and parcel of what recovery requires us to think about from a masculine point of view. And that's what hopefully we are going to have.
So Andrew, for let's say families watching now that have adolescent boys struggling with eating disorders, whether it's ARFID or heavy duty restricting and overexercising, scary low BMIs, even for a guy, height restriction possibly caused by restricting food. What could you tell them to give them hope in the possibility of their child finding healing and fulfilling life, not held back by this eating disorder?
So I would always start, first and foremost, parents are typically blaming themselves. And so I say, parents, not your fault. You didn't cause this. I guarantee you, if you have multiple kids in your house and you treated them all the same way, whoever was genetically predisposed to this obsessional thinking, comparison thinking, anxiety spectrum stuff, depression spectrum stuff, they may have turned to seek control from their eating disorder for whatever they experienced. But guess what? Your other kids were probably, you know, they may have dabbled in diet culture, but it didn't turn into an eating disorder. So eating disorders are genetically based diseases that are triggered by the environment. So parents, you have a responsibility to get your kid help, but it's not your fault, but you have a responsibility. Now, is recovery possible? Absolutely. The majority of people who get care and get care quickly and get it from effective evidence-based treatment providers, which is key, you've got a real good shot at recovery. But it's going to require medical, psychological, psychiatric, nutritional, and family-based interventions. And if you can do that, if you really give your energy and effort and your patience to the process, yeah, your kid will recover. It's doable. I have my own personal experience as a patient. I have experience of nearly 20 years in the world of eating disorders. I have my own son who could not eat solid food due to ARFID until he was 7. And I went through the training as a parent, just like parents do, to learn how to help your kid through the emotional, the anxiety stuff that leads to them not being able to eat. I had always wished, God, one day I really hope that I will get to have a cheeseburger with my son. And boy, I get to have the cheeseburger with my son, and it's a great thing. It's a beautiful thing. And to have that normal relationship. But the other thing is to recognize your own sense of masculinity and your own definition of it. And if it is potentially toxic and triggering, and to question it. It is also to understand the diet culture and the body ideal culture that we live in and how to question it, that it is not simply a female specific experience, that males, in fact, there's a Samsung research study done probably about 7 years ago that was looking at the rates of selfies being taken, male or female, and that males actually took significantly more selfies than females. Females posted more often,
Yeah,
but males were taking more.
that's interesting.
So that is interesting, right? So there's still a body image fixation, and that the latest studies on body image dissatisfaction show males are every bit as concerned and overwhelmed by their own body and how it's perceived. And we have to learn how to talk about the language of anxiety and emotions and value of a person, not for their ability to look a certain way. Again, your body is your home, not your billboard. And that your value is in how you relate to people, treat people, provide for others, your connection to the larger world, and not necessarily what we grow up as males in this culture to define as important. Money, power, sexual prowess, not promiscuity, sexual, but sexual, power. I mean, for lack of a better word, what is all of the beefcake mentality about? I am a sexually desirable being, the value is not in your stats, your bank account, your, how much weight you lift, the numbers. Your value is in your relationship. And that guys actually do want to talk. There's this unreal belief by so many people that men don't want to talk.
Mm-hmm.
And they do. The research is really clear on this. Guys have a lot to say, but they often feel like nobody wants them to talk. And that's really very, very interesting. And it's often also they don't have the language necessarily to understand what they're thinking and why they're feeling what they're feeling, even how to label what that emotion might be. So many of us are taught, as I was taught, stop your crying, pull yourself up, and several other inappropriate words that we all have learned in our world.
Wow, you're just such a wealth of insight. I know people are just going to be so excited to watch this and have a broader understanding and the hope of recovery. So Andrew is the founder of the Body Image Therapy Center, and you can reach them at 844-394-3319. And Andrew, can you tell us where your locations are?
Yeah, actually, I'm not sure what number you just gave, but 877-674-2843 is actually our regular number. So let's make sure we got that, 877-674-2843. And you can find us on the web.
That number does go through. It's just a tracking number that we...
It's a tracking number for you guys. I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. But so the other number that you can call this number, or will you please reiterate your direct line?
Our direct line is 877-674-2843. And I'm so sorry. And our website is www.thebodyimagecenter.com. You can also email us info@thebodyimagecenter.com. And we do more than residential. Body Image Therapy Center is in Baltimore, Maryland, where we have partial hospital, intensive outpatient, and transitional living for PHP and IOP in our Baltimore City location, right near Penn Station, in the heart of Baltimore, right near Johns Hopkins University and the Maryland Institute College of Art and the University of Baltimore. It's a very cool area called the Station North Arts District. And then we have an adolescent only program. That's an IOP for adolescents, which is all genders. That's in Columbia, Maryland. And that is a family-based program. And then we have our DC program, which is right near the National Zoo in the heart of DC. right on the Red Line in Woodley Park for the subway. And that is also a partial hospital and intensive outpatient program. And we do provide psychiatry, medical, nutrition, and counseling, as well as good experiential work where we have fully functional high-level kitchens where people are going to be able to, once we're out of COVID, be able to do a lot of the hands-on exposure and response prevention work that is so crucial to move beyond your fears and anxieties about food.
Yeah, absolutely. And in my heart, at least, to address the underlying anxiety, depression, trauma that's fueling all this, and for people to have some peace with COVID, are there options for folks that are out of town to access any of your services online?
Certainly. Right now, we are seeing people from a lot of the surrounding states in the Mid-Atlantic. So we have clients from Pennsylvania, Delaware, West Virginia, Virginia. There is a real good interrelationship between all the states to be able to do IOP and PHP virtually. All our program is virtual right now. But we are hoping to start moving to a hybrid format where at least individual therapy can be done in person. Groups certainly, because of space limitations, makes it hard. But we hope that as things start to open back up, perhaps by summertime, groups and everything will be back in person.
Yes.
In the meantime, we expect that we are going to continue to be very full, which we have been. Our Poor Adolescent program is currently on a 2-month wait list. And there's just such a need. Kids are struggling so hard right now. It breaks my heart just as clearly it's breaking yours as I see you holding your chest.
Yeah.
And it is exactly that feeling. And we have adults who are coming in sicker than I have ever seen for this level of care. And which is a big reason why we've been pushing so hard to get this residential open, because people are more sick than I've ever seen. The COVID and civil unrest, and no matter whatever else is going on in your life, I mean, just to deal with those two things will be enough to cause somebody with no typical stress to develop severe anxiety and depression and trauma. And so coupling that with everything else that is going on for the person with an eating disorder who feels the world is so out of control for them, they need a safe place. And so, again, I want to reiterate that while we are definitely creating a men's unit, every gender is treated in our program, and that we have a really strong emphasis on being racially diverse, on being ethnically diverse, on being religiously diverse, LGBTQ diverse and inclusive. So that's really, really important to me. I want to be the place that does not look like every other eating disorder program out there. No offense to all the other programs. My guiding principle is I was the outcast who was literally not welcome in the room because I was a man. And that drives my desire to create a truly inclusive place. For instance, our residential program, I remember posting something on the Health at Every Size Facebook group, and people were saying, if you truly are health at every size, do you have bathrooms that can support me? I'm a 800-pound person. And I thought to myself, well, that certainly is hard to do in a house built in 1893. But let me see what I can do. And we talked to the architect, and we built an ADA bathroom. And I know how hard it is when you're a bigger person to be able to feel like you can take care of your own hygiene, particularly when you go to the bathroom and you need to have a bowel movement. It's not fun to talk about. It is uncomfortable to talk about, but you need to have the ability to take care of people and meet them with what they need. So we built a bathroom that can, where we've got bidets, where we've got ADA accessible showers, that we've got a bedroom on the first floor that can handle very large bodied people. And so you don't have to be able to go up and down 2 or 3 flights of stairs to get help. If you are struggling with an eating disorder, you should not be ignored. You need to be seen. Our furniture has been, picked out so that we are able to meet the needs of people in every body size. These are the things that I want people to know. You are seen, you are welcome, and this is a home for everybody.
The sensitivity and thought put into your program is evident. It's wonderful. And Andrew, thank you for your time today. You are just an excellent speaker and person in the forefront leading us in the journey to improve our care for males struggling with eating disorders.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.